Sure. What's up, Nathan?
Hey,
Welcome back.
hey, Scott, how's it been? It's been a
Great.
long week.
Yeah, long week. We missed each other a few times. It's
We
mainly
did.
my bad. Um, been
We've all got a
moving.
lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, but we're here. So today we're going to talk about piggybacking off of the last episode, having you found a founder. Now, what domain in terms of web or mobile and what those terms mean, and where you should be focusing your efforts.
So, meaning like you have a founding partner, right? We talked about partnerships last time, right? And then let's say we also have an idea ready to go. And then it's kind of how do we choose? Is it a web technology solution? Is it a mobile technology solution? Is it something different? Is that what you mean?
That is what I mean.
Awesome.
That's why I like when you start us off
All right,
a
I'll
little
try
more
again
clear.
next week then.
um, yeah. So what are your thoughts initially on, like, how do you decide what to focus on, web or mobile?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's also a kind of a can of worms in the sense that we could probably go on this topic forever. And kind of with a hypothetical example like this, it's a bit harder to go in any direction in particular, right? But I think some of the things that I would keep in mind, right, when kind of thinking about this particular problem is, again, obviously at this point we need to understand what problem it is we're trying to solve. And hopefully when you, which we already talked about in previous episodes, right? And let's assume we kind of know and understand our problem space, our competitive landscape, and things like that, right? You'll have a good enough understanding to be able to assess where best to start, right? I think some things to keep in mind, or that I would keep in mind, when thinking about this problem is, I think today, and it'd be interesting to pull up the stats, maybe I'll try to do that as we're talking here, but is the fact that most eyes, most eyeballs, most time spent, using technology devices today, I believe is on mobile devices, right? So that's where most people, most of their time spent, at a computer or mobile device or TV or whatever is spent on a mobile device. So that's just something to keep in mind, because that's where people spend most of their time. So you're increasing your chances of, your target audience and user, right, spending the time using your product that you want to build, right? So that's, just something to keep in mind. I think, there are other considerations, especially if you're thinking, or when thinking about mobile, I guess, is there's a certain kind of features and functionality that a mobile device provides you that are harder, if not impossible, to get just like on a web application or a desktop application, right? Namely, things like a precise location and position, right, through GPS. Yes, you can get proximate location using a web browser. I think it's basically your internet provider triangulation, right, that'll give your web browser a approximate location. But if you want a precise location, you have that functionality that is provided to you in a mobile device, or I should say most mobile devices, right? There are things like access to cameras, high-end cameras that are available on mobile devices that are sometimes harder to get on desktop or laptop computers, or less accessible through web, applications and interfaces. There are things like accelerometers, right, in a watch or a mobile device that you don't get typically on laptop or desktop computers. So that's, all that to say is, if kind of your idea and product has a heavy reliance on some of those things, then in a sense, you're kind of forced down the path of looking at mobile technologies, right? With that said, I also think that the barrier to entry, I guess, in kind of mobile development is probably a bit higher than if you're just doing some basic web applications. You know, like we talked about in previous episodes, you could conceivably start your project and idea on a service provider like Wix or Squarespace or whatever, where you have already kind of out of the box rich functionality. And that's pretty, you know, low barrier to entry. You could also start building your own web applications, right? That are probably lower barrier to entry than having to develop mobile devices, right? Or developing for mobile devices. So I think if you wanted to or needed to start accessing these mobile native, you know, features and functionality like GPS, accelerometer, and et cetera, you're forced kind of to develop native applications. And then that just opens Pandora's box of, okay, do you do iOS? Do you do, so Apple devices, right? Do you do Android? Do you do Windows phones? If that's still a thing, right? So I don't know. That was a kind of a long diatribe. I'm
that was really
curious what
good.
you think.
It's funny, in the beginning you mentioned that most people spend most of their time on native apps.
Mobile devices is what I said.
Mobile devices, sorry. And I just think about my work day, and I didn't even realize that. Like, you're right. It's just something I didn't think about.
And I don't even know. I mean, I don't even know if you're the prime statistic for this either, because you're an engineer. So you spend a lot of time developing software and technology products. And for that, typically you need a computer, laptop, desktop, whatever, where you spend quite a bit of time. But even with that said, you are now yourself self-admitting that you spend a lot of time on your mobile device, right? So imagine people who aren't engineers.
Yeah.
Right. Where do you think they're going to be spending time?
Yeah, that's a great point. And then you mentioned something about barrier to entry. Traditionally, I haven't met many even in engineering, I haven't met many mobile only engineers. I could probably count them on my hands, which is super interesting. I think the cost of building a mobile application is definitely higher. Do you think, like, if we agree that our product needs the functionalities that a native device like a phone, camera, accelerometer, GPS does, do you also need a website? Like a, not just, I guess this is open-ended, but beyond informational, do you need a website for functionality?
That's a great question. And by the way, while you were talking, I was just trying to pull up some statistics here. And according to CNET, in 2021, and of course now I lost the row where I saw the number, but people were spending an average of 4.1 hours a day on their mobile devices. So that's a large chunk of a 24-hour day, right?
Yeah.
To go back to your question, that again, I think it depends a lot on what it is you're trying to build. I think you did touch on something that I was going to say. I think the informational website and the informational presence is a must-have prerequisite requirement that you should have. And that's primarily because I think still today, the general population, right, when they go use technology products and services, it starts with Google, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, maybe today, I don't know, right, where they start with searches, right? And it's not as easy to be found in a search or to interact in any kind of ease of use or easy to use way, I should say. Search results for application, let's say your application is one of the results in your Google search, than it is to go in and just interact with the product itself online. So again, I think it depends a lot, but I'm of the opinion, I can share my opinion. I do think when you build products and services, it's best to have the application and the functionality, maybe not full functionality, but some of it available both, mobile first, if that's where you focus, but on the web as well. I get pretty frustrated when, I'm not playing on my mobile device, right? And I want to go do something for app A, B, or C, and I can't do it, on my desktop or whatever, because they have no web presence, right? Again, am I the typical user? Probably not.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time at the computer, but still, right?
Yeah. That's interesting.
Especially when, today, and probably I suspect you have more experience than I do with this, but, you have frameworks and technologies like, React Native that kind of allow you to build something once, write the code once, essentially, right? And have whatever you're building available on all platforms, web, Android, iOS, right? So at that point, might as well do that, right? But I don't know if you have experience with React Native, if you have opinions on it.
I don't. That makes me a little nervous though.
Why?
Those domains are so vastly different between web and native, and then within native iOS and Android, that I would things like scare me when they're just magic solutions to your problems that take like a lot of craft. So I think those are really good tools. I think I'd have to actually build something and see how it works. Because a native experience is very different than a mobile experience or a mobile web experience. And so I think let's say you did find a developer to do this and they were really good. I think you would need to put a lot of thought into your web experience and your native mobile experience.
Can you, because that's a great point. What you bring up, I actually tend to agree. Can you say more in your mind? What are the kind of biggest differences between like a mobile native application experience versus like a mobile web experience, right? Because a lot of even the default browsers in a lot of these devices and operating systems on your mobile device, right? They try as hard as they possibly can to have experiences in the mobile, browser be as close to, as similar, as seamless, when comparing it to like a native application. So what's the difference between the two?
It's a great question, and I don't know if I have a great answer for it. I think understanding it goes back to understanding your domain. Things in mobile web. I don't understand native technologies that really. I mean, I could probably figure it out, but I don't understand them that deeply. But when you're on a mobile site, things are cramped. Even if they're done really well, like if it's a complex thing, things are crammed together, and then the user interactions need to be very well thought out for a mobile experience. So like the other day, I was trying to order something at a coffee shop beforehand, and it was probably the worst experience I've ever dealt with. But they also have a mobile app. And so it's like, it's data organization where I think in web, too much data might be presented because maybe you don't have the engineering capacity to really engineer these things in a way that makes sense for your users to have a seamless experience. Where in mobile, I feel like just because of the domain, you're forced to simplify things a bit more, and you have less potential for interaction. Like In web, you're like, if you think, what website am I on? It's like you have the header and then you have the drop down and you have all this stuff. But in mobile, you're in their world, so you know where you are. So you
Yeah.
can clean a lot of that stuff up. Yeah, I could go on. That's what I'll say about it. But I don't think you can design a mobile web application to be seamlessly mobile native. I think that'd be amazing. I think it would take a lot of effort. But in a entrepreneur situation we're talking about, I think that
Yeah.
it would be very hard to do. Which would bring me back to our original conversation of understanding your customer and domain. If you're just targeting a demographic that are iPhone users, maybe you just invest in that, instead of trying to throw everything into one
Yeah.
and capture, because I think less people having a great experience is better than a bunch of people having a shitty experience. And
I would agree.
Club-
Always.
did you download Clubhouse when it was
I
around?
did.
So that's a really good candidate for mobile. And the UI I thought I was actually really impressed. It was like a really good user experience, and I was thoroughly impressed. And my use case for it kind of diminished over a pretty short period of time. But that was a perfect
Mhm.
use case. And they even said we're only doing iOS for now. So if you don't have an iOS device, like, sorry. And they optimize their experience for the set of users. And I think everyone had a very positive experience.
Yeah.
And that left a pretty good minds, or I don't want to say like left a good taste in your mouth, but like you're excited to use the product.
I get the point.
Yeah, you
can
get the
use that
point.
analogy. I like it. I like food.
So yeah, that was a little bit of a rant, but
No, I mean, it's interesting, and I would agree. I think it's very hard to replicate the as seamless and as clean experiences that you can get in native, through web applications. And often I think it kind of falls in kind of two categories of or two buckets of why you end up with, say, a native app and a mobile experience. Is either you're starting and you just want to go super wide and hit as many people as possible for as cheap as possible. So you are building something with a like React Native type framework where you're building it once, kind of trying it for everyone and just have a massive blast radius. And you do it once because you're low on resources or money or time or whatever it is. And you're just, shipping this out there. And then I would argue in situations like that, you have pretty poor experiences, like as you described, right? Or in the other bucket, it's like people that have optimized the heck out of their, iOS app and their web app, and their Android app, right? And now like, hey, we've got time and resources and money. Why don't we check another box and gain even more coverage by providing, even if it's not the best, but we provide one native experience
right.
Mobile web experience, right? And when you get to that point, then you can spend the time, money, people, resources, and whatnot to tailor the iOS Safari experience to be the best it can be for that browser on that device. And then you will build a different app and experience for, the Chrome browser on Android devices and whatever. And at that point, you're really spending the time and money and effort to design properly and build for each one of these kind of setups, I guess,
Yep.
right?
I think you made me think of something. What seems to happen when people start a technology business or build a product is they throw a lot of money at it, and then there's always problems. Like there's bugs, there's new features, things don't work the way they thought, it's slow. And controlling your domain in that phase, I think, is super important. Because if someone has people are using this on Safari and Chrome browsers, but something broke in Safari, but like 30% of the users use Safari, you're going to have to fix that. But is that impact? So now let's say we're using React Native for web and mobile. Is that bug fix going to break something else in mobile? And you've just tripled your risk potential
Yeah.
in bugs and chasing after these things when you just need to be figuring out if this is a viable business or not.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think should be taken pretty seriously.
I think that topic in and of itself is worth a full
Oh
maybe
yeah.
one or more episodes, which we should do at a later point in time. So maybe you just managed to provide us the best segue possible there, Scott, for next week.
That's what they call me.
That's
Segue.
Segue Scott. Segue Scott. All right. That's going to stick, man. We're going to stick with that, Segue Scott.
All
In
right.
any case, anything more you want to add before we go? Wrap this thing up.
To recap, it's a very similar theme, and I know this might be boring to some people, but it's super important. Is start small, fix your problems, and move on from there. Like there's people get excited and scope gets huge, where just keep reining it back.
Yeah.
So, and
Scope
that'll I
creep.
think set you up for success. Yeah.
Yeah.
Scope creep. Great phrase. Well, thank you so much, Nathan. It was great as always.
As always, Scott, appreciate your time. Appreciate you, man. Take care and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good.
All right.